So we've now looked at how do we affect our opponent's structure and posture from top side control. We're now going to talk about base. So base is a platform from which to apply and absorb force, and it's relative to your goals. So for us, as we talked about in the earlier video, base for us is generating force into our opponent and stopping them from being able to move, and using it to generate force into our opponent's limbs to access them as levers and create vulnerability. Kevin's his goal on the bottom is to either turn into me so that he's able to face all his weapons against me and start re-guarding, or even possibly threatening with a submission, or turning away so that he's able to start building the base into turtle. So first, is your opponent in proper base? A lot of people, when they're first working on their defenses from bad positions, you keep the shoulder blades flat on the mat. I am beside Kevin, so if I just sit here hip to hip next to Kevin, even dead toes, and Kevin's facing straight up and just bridges right now, the bridge actually doesn't affect me. It can affect me a little bit more, yes, if I am on top of him here, but even if he bridges right now, it's not moving me because I'm very rarely actually sitting on top of his hips. We usually have some sort of check against his hips, whether it's our hips beside him, our arm, or our knees, or like in kind of a knee ride position. I'm more typically up on his chest, and his chest does not move during the bridge. What Kevin wants to do is turn onto his side, and so at a 45-degree angle facing me, if he bridges now, he's actually generating force into his opponent, which is me. So even here, if I'm in a proper position, he's framing me right now, and he's on his side, and he bridges, this is going to affect my alignment, and during these movements, now he's able to hip out and re-guard. In the other direction, if Kevin is able to manage the range with some sort of a frame and turn away, and now bridge and go into turtle, he's now creating a ton of mobility in his hips, and he's going to have many more options for defense. So if I like attacking the turtle, that's not necessarily a bad thing for me, because I'm going to have more options being the top player because I am in that position of advantage, but I want to be able to control that movement, and I want him to move on my terms rather than moving on his own terms. So what we're looking at is rotational control of our opponent so that he's unable to turn into us or turn away from us unless we want him to. So it's this box principle that Ryan Hall has made so popular, and it's a great way of explaining it. Kevin's shoulders and hips are basically just a rectangle. So we have the 2 points, the right and left shoulder, and we got the right and left hip. And off that, we have these sticks or levers that extend out of it. If Kevin is beside me and I want to stop him from being able to turn into me, I either will be applying an upwards force on his hips or shoulders on this side. So if I lifted him up here and he tries to turn into me, it's very difficult to do so. There I'm just using the gi. If I wanted to stop him from being able to turn into me, I gotta use the far side, then I'm just creating a pinning motion here so that as he tries to turn in, it's gonna be very difficult to do so. If I use levers, I'm gonna be using a mechanical advantage. So if I pinned his wrist out here, this is gonna be the most exaggerated version of that lever that if Kevin tries to turn into me, it's very difficult. That is what the underhook is doing. Whether I've opened this up to actually access his elbow as a lever, or I'm just pinning the shoulder directly, I'm creating pressure shoulder to shoulder here so that if Kevin tries to turn into me, he's not going to be effective. If you have an underhook and your opponent's able to just turn into you right now, that was not correct. So understand what that underhook is there for. We are looking to be able to affect our opponent's structure by opening the elbow and using direct rotational control on that shoulder to stop them from being able to turn into us. Using this arm, the more realistic ways of doing this is pulling up on the elbow, whether it's from like a Kazuri Kazakatami or just a traditional side control. By lifting up on this elbow, if Kevin tries to turn into me right now and withdraw this elbow, it's very difficult to. The same, because I have this control, if Kevin tries to turn away from me, his arm is getting blocked. And see how his body turns but his arm doesn't? So it affects his structure and it stops him from being able to rotate once he gets to a certain point. Same like we talked about with the structure. If he's framing me here, and I'm able to open this up, bring my knee up high to his shoulder, and drop down here, now his arm is shelved on my hips. And so if he was to try to turn into me right now, it's going to be very difficult to do so. If I block effectively over top, closing my knee and elbow, which I would with, say, a crossface, if he tries to turn away from me, it's going to be very difficult to do so because his arm is going to constantly collide into my armpit and my bicep. So that's some of the ways that I can use the arms to control the rotation of my opponent. In the same way that we can use our opponent's arms as levers to control the rotation up at the shoulders, we can use our opponent's legs. So if Kevin is trying to turn into me by accessing his legs as a lever and redirecting him away from me, I'm going to be able to have rotational control. It can be very difficult for me to try and use an arm to overpower my opponent's leg unless I have an extremely dominant angle and his alignment was already compromised. The more common ways that you're going to see this happening is underhooking the leg and grabbing to this far leg so I can create a closed circuit where now I'm braced. If I just try and hold Kevin like this and he extends his leg, it's very easy for him to just overpower me. But if I can anchor it to his other leg, whether I'm just cupping on top of its no-gi or grabbing the gi pants, if he tries to extend now, he's pushing into his own leg, and I'm supporting this just basically with my forearm bone. So from here, I'm able to rotate by driving with my shoulder and extending my bicep to redirect him away. If he tries to, so this is one that I commonly use a lot when my opponent tries to turn into me. Kevin tries to turn in. I'm hooking here, looking to redirect. I can do the same thing on this side, where if Kevin tries to turn into me, by hooking on the inside and redirecting, or by grabbing on the inside of the near leg, like this, as Kevin tries to turn into me, I can redirect him away. Just be cautious when you reach inside the legs that you got those triangles like Braulio Simas where he's able to hook like this. So as long as we keep ourselves in proper alignment, so that as I'm reaching, I'm managing the range with proper frames, and I'm keeping myself in strong posture and base. So as I hook here, if Kevin tries to grab me right now, he's not going to get past my head. But if I do this, as I'm trying to grab him, then this is normally when we end up in those awful positions where our opponent was in a bottom, awful position and manages to wrap their legs around our head and shoulder and get us in some kind of compromised triangle. Usually we messed up with our own alignment. Another way that we can turn the legs away is by using our own hips. So I'm in this position where I just solidified, say, a knee cup position, and I'm gonna actually just walk my hips back into Kevin's legs. Right now it's hip to hip, generating base with live toes, and I'm walking my hips back. And by starting to access his legs as a lever, I'm going to turn his hips away from me. So here, as I start finishing my pass, it can be off of just finishing the pass, or I can use it at any point I wish. Here, as Kevin's trying to turn into me, I'm walking my hips back into Kevin, redirecting the legs, so now Kevin's hips are turned away from me. Now I am able to move into solidifying a more dominant version of side control in which I have broken my opponent's alignment.